The Change Physician, episode 117.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Change Physician podcast. As your host, Dr. Kevin Kukara, with my fabulous and amazing and stupendous co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady. And we have a very special treat for you today with our wonderful guest. This is Mr. Billy and Akaisha Kaderli. Did I get that correct?
Very good. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for having us, Kevin.
All right. And just a little bit of background here is if you are a physician and you are been really challenged, and we know with the state of healthcare, there's a lot of stress and a lot of burnout. And so there's a sort of desire to leave, and there's a desire to kind of set up this financial independence. And what has been interesting to me, having gone through the materials, there's a lot of people who talk about this stuff. But what is fascinating about Billy and Akaisha is not only do they talk about it, they've actually been doing it. And not only have they been doing it, but they're approaching their fourth decade of being financially independent. And they are the definitive at retiring at the age of 38. So fabulous to have you on the podcast. I know the listeners are going to get out of this interview, but can you guys give us a little background about who you are and what started this journey for yourselves?
We were young in our 30s in California, and we were doing all the things that young Californians do, buying a house, working overtime, collecting our money, trying to get up the social ladder and so on. And we found ourselves as passing ships in the night. It was a lot of stress. We had a restaurant. Billy is a trained French chef. That's his first career. So we owned the restaurant together. And as you know, that's 24/7 pretty much, 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then his boss, I'm sorry, I'll back up. One of our customers recruited him to work for Dean Witter Reynolds. At that time, it was Dean Witter Reynolds.
It's Morgan Stanley Dean Witter.
Right. And so what happened then is I was working nights, weekends, and holidays, and Billy began working Monday through Friday, getting off at 1 p.m. with all of his weekends off. And so that put even more stress on the relationship, because he's having all this extra free time, and I'm working. So there's more to the story than all of that. But what happened was we kind of hit a wall, and Billy says, look, why don't we just quit our jobs and travel the world? And I said, oh yeah, sure. No worries. We can do that, So anyway, we took 2 years to do that. We tracked our spending and decided what we wanted to do with our time once we were without a paycheck and without a career to define ourselves and so on. And we took off from there.
Now you got to remember, this is before the internet and before all these blogs, and our website was out there and whatever. So we were pretty much out on our own, and we were doing this on the back of an envelope. We kept doing back of the envelope computations. And, we would have discussions about it, and sometimes high frequency discussions, and just trying to poke holes into it. What are we missing here? This, we took a look at what we had, the assets that we had, and we said, well, if we just put it all into the market, we can pretty much cover expenses and still have growth. And so that's what got us thinking about this. And we started knocking these ideas around, and then all of a sudden we'd pick up a People magazine or something magazine, and we'd see this couple that's sailing in the Pacific or in the Atlantic, on a cruiser, and it was like, well, they can do it, we can do it.
Right.
And so we took note of our assets, what our net worth was at the time, and like I said, we took 2 years to plan this very diligently. We didn't just cut and run, and the rest is history.
Can I ask a little bit about that 2 years though? So there's a time period where you're sort of tossing the idea back and forth, and you're like, and it's very easy to do, right? The dreaming phase.
Correct.
When did you set the 2 year time frame? Was that dreaming phase part of the 2 years, or did you said, you know what, if we're going to do this, let's start here and we'll look over the next 2 years and see whether it's feasible? Or was it just more like we're going to plan for 2 years and then do it?
I think a little bit of both. You don't do it until you do it. So a lot of times, a lot of people plan things and then they get derailed. But we were the first thing we did was, okay, how is this really going to work mathematically and financially? And so we started tracking all of our spending, what we were spending just on ourselves. We eliminated our home cost. We eliminated our mortgage. We eliminated car payments. We eliminated car insurance. We eliminated wardrobe expenses, dry cleaning, lunches out, anything that was work related. And we found out that we really were not spending very much on ourselves. That figure back then in 1991 was around 20,000 US dollars. And you say that to a doctor, and you say, I spend that a month. And I understand, but you're not spending that on yourself. You're spending it on lavish parties and entertaining your house and a second wife and all kinds of stuff. Look, I know physicians. I used to manage their money. So anyway, once we figured out that was a key component of the equation, was how much we were actually spending on ourselves at the lifestyle we were currently living.
Which wasn't too bad.
It wasn't too bad living in Santa Cruz, California. And so once we got that figured out, then we started taking a look at the investment side of it. Now, we had equity in our home, which we had to get that out at some point, and we couldn't just sell the cars and continue working. So we had to factor these things in, and it was a lot of discussions regarding what we were going to do with our time after not working. Where were we going to go? Because we didn't want to stay in Santa Cruz, because we didn't want to just go give the house and then rent someplace. That wasn't the plan. And our plan was to travel, which is something both of us have done individually and together. And so we, after that 2 years of when we finally cut the cord, we moved to an island in the Caribbean named Nevus. It's a 36 square mile island. And besides the beaches and diving and snorkeling, there isn't a whole lot to do there, which was perfect because I wanted to hit a wall. We're both achievers, and we both like to get involved in things. But I wanted to go someplace where nothing, I used to say down in Nevus, if you want a hamburger today, you better order it yesterday, because that's how slow things go. And so that was the first 6 months right there.
Wow. Before you head out of that whole 2-year planning, I'm curious, did you feel the need to have someone else help you with that, or did you just kind of go through the numbers yourselves? Did you have some kind of advisor or consultant?
Well, I am the advisor.
Yeah.
So just from your own work, own work. Okay.
Yeah.
But I've been gifted with mathematics.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to be nice about it. I'm not bragging. It just happens to come naturally to me. And when I started doing the numbers, and you start using exponential numbers to see what the future might look like.
Sure.
It was all there.
I'm gonna kind of focus in on that a little bit. For those listeners who don't know, there's something that's known about the 4% withdrawal rate, and that came out of the Trinity study, but that Trinity study wasn't published, at least in my knowledge, until 1998. You guys are in 1991.
Right.
So where did you get your safe withdrawal numbers for? Was that just from your mathematical brain, or did you? So you were pre-study, you're basically pre-Trinity.
Yes, what we did is, like I said, once we figured out how much we were spending, and I used a figure back then of around 10%. That we could generate off of our investments in the markets. So then I figured out, we're spending around, it just happened to be around 4% at the time. And so another way to do that is once you figure out how much you're spending, then multiply that number by 25. That's a backdoor way of getting to your 4% rule. And that tells you the amount of invested assets you need in order to create the 4% rule.
Mm-hmm. So now you're approaching, you got this plan, and you've been planning this for 2 years. Now it's time to basically pull the jump cord on this. What were your feelings? Because this is another thing I think is always interesting, is we always live in these daydreams, but then when you actually have to cross the threshold, all of those happy thoughts about, well, this is gonna be so great, all of a sudden all the negative thoughts pull in, and they're like, well, what if the bad, all that, the human brain starts seeing all the negative things. So what was that transition like for you guys?
Well, what happened was it wasn't all roses at the time. I went ahead and flew down to Nevus because Akaisha had needed to finish up getting rid of our furniture and things of that sort out of the house. And then what happened, of all things, was the Gulf War I broke out. While I'm in Nevus and she's in California. And go ahead, honey.
Well, that's the thing, right? It was difficult enough because we were on our own, and I trusted Billy completely with the numbers. But the hardest part was the emotional component of retirement. And so we had this plan to go to Nevus and just hit the wall and relax on the beach and not do a whole lot. And so we had a friend down on Nevus who was opening up the Four Seasons Resort, and we thought we'd help out a little bit with that just as a transition period. But like Billy said, the Gulf War broke out. And, everybody was saying, don't travel, wait till the war is over. I'm going, wait till the war's over. I mean, when's that going to be, And so it was definitely like either go or not go. This is what's going to happen. And by that time, I'd already quit my job. There was no furniture in the house. What was I going to do? And so I just said, well, I'm going, and so I got on the plane and I was down, and that's how it started. That's exactly our first days of our retirement was like, even a war couldn't keep us apart, I mean, it was just, it was that kind of thing.
And I was standing on the dock waiting for her when she came up on the boat.
Yeah.
So how was it when you say you hit the wall and you didn't have all these, I guess I can just say expectations or responsibilities? Some people I find, people I've met that are patients or that they get to retirement and they don't like the quiet, and all these expectations are used to fulfilling, give them a sense of meaning or purpose. What was the transition like for you? Was it super easy or shift?
Well, when there's nothing, no opportunities, then there wasn't a whole lot going on in Nevus. Nevus is a very, very nice island in the Caribbean.
9 square miles.
And I accomplished a dream of mine. That was to learn how to scuba dive.
Oh.
And while I was there, like Akaisha said, the Four Seasons Hotel opened up, and there was only one dive instructor. We were pretty good friends by then, and so I was taking 4 people out, and he was taking 4 people out, so he could double his revenue.
Oh.
And I'm not even certified when I'm doing this. I mean, this is, this is,
We might need to edit that.
Well, there's sharing, and then there's oversharing,
I think statutes run out. So
we're only going down 28 feet. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but on for the first dive, and so, but it helped him out, and then I got to dive for free, and so that was kind of a.
Let me just also say that at this time, remember, there's no cell phones, there's no iPhone, there's no internet, there's no Skype, there's no Amazon, there's no wireless transfers that you can do on your phone. There's nothing, no email, nothing. So, and there's no forums or anything. So like, I read every book that was in the house, cookbooks from one end to the other, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, and we walked everywhere. We went to the beach, we swam. It was like a completely new definition of who we were, what we were going to do with our time. We knew that we were going to just go and just get the stress out.
Wow. Yeah, because there is that you have to have the capacity to look for resources to keep yourself occupied versus like being bored and then feeling not happy with the boredom because you don't fill it.
Right. But there's no bad days at the beach, so all I need to do is go to the beach, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Well, let's hammer in on that though, because that is an important point. Because if you look at sort of mortality data again, where people, and granted they're not retiring at 38, so this would be often not in your situation, but a traditional retirement, people are retiring in their late 60s or whatever. There's a steep drop off in mortality about 6 months after people retire.
That's right.
And part of that may be because of age, but there's a lot of data about mental health and stress. And retirement is a major distressor on the body.
Correct.
And so when you're now on Nevus, you are in I kind of like how you forced solitude where there's nothing to do pre-internet. So like really nothing to do, folks.
Right.
Anybody
Really
who can remember that time period, not like my kids complaining that they're bored when they have 5,000 things they can stream. Did you're getting used to everything, but we're using that time to sort of then plan out what this next phase of your life would be? Or did you just, as you've proceeded over the last 3 decades, has it been more of a spontaneous kind of adventure for you?
It's been spontaneous. It's
very organic.
Yeah, very organic. And we both knew that we wanted to travel the world. And just to complicate things, I'm directionally challenged. I'm not as good at these things at all. And so like he wants to take me somewhere, I'm going, So we spent 6 months on those islands in the Caribbean, and then we flew to Venezuela.
No, we took a sailboat south.
Oh yes, we took a sailboat
down to Granada. And then from Grenada, we flew to Venezuela.
Well, I got that part right. I forgot about the sailboat. That's real important, though.
Well, it's nice because it's a 256-foot sailboat.
Yeah,
And,
we knew the captain.
we knew the captain. I managed the captain's money.
Wow.
And so he came into Nevus the first Wednesday of every month. And so I met him at the dock and I said, Paul, listen, we're ready to get off the rock. Can we sail south with you? And he says, well, I'm full. And I said, we'll sleep up on deck. It's okay. I mean, just store our gear down below. And because there's nice mats up there to lay out and sunbathe and whatever. Well, we did that for 2 nights and he felt guilty and he gave us the captain's quarters.
So there we were.
So we sailed a couple weeks down to Grenada. And then we got off the boat there or the ship, I should say. And then we flew over to Caracas, Venezuela. And we ran around there a bit and made it up to the coast, to the Isla de Margarita, which is a very popular island off the coast of Venezuela. And I thought we were back in the States. I mean, it was so modern there. So then from there, we flew back to the States and we eventually bought a 5th-wheel trailer. And we traveled the Western States a couple loops through all the Western States. And
It's just real organic. You know, I was up for anything, and we like moving. We like being on the move. You know, we like new experiences, and we've always been a little bit outside the box. It's a little bit self-motivated and that kind of thing. So we never really quite fit anyway. So if we're outside the box, we're more comfortable there anyway.
Yes.
So
And as we've aged, now we've got a saying that we just try to make it to Friday.
Yeah.
Right. So that's our long-term goal.
That's
right
long-term planning. And like we got to start over. Today's Saturday. Oh my gosh. Now we got a whole another week to get through.
So I'm assuming a minimalist kind of possessions when it comes to traveling, or do you have like a place where you keep things, or how do you move about the way you do?
That kind of happened organically as well, because remember at that time we were both doing businesses. We had this beautiful home a quarter mile from the beach. We had house cleaners and gardeners, and we had lavish parties and were entertained with wines from the Napa Valley. We're in California, and I had summer clothes and winter clothes and layering clothes and the nail polish, and so like paring down was a necessity, because if I wanted it, I had to carry it. Well, it got heavy real fast, so that's kind of how that was. And in the first couple of years, we did have some stuff in storage, in case we wanted to go back to work. Well, I would not do that again. I would definitely not recommend that. Either you're in or you're out. Get rid of the clothes.
By the time we went back to clean it out, we could have bought the stuff twice.
Yeah, exactly.
For what we paid for rent, it's just not worth it.
But it was like a blanket, baby blanket for us, the security blanket for us.
And one other thing we do is when we travel, like we try to set up a base. Like Chapala is one of our bases, and then there's a place in Guatemala called Panajachel, Guatemala. It's on Lake Atitlan. That's another one of our bases. And then we base out of Chiang Mai, Thailand as well. And we leave things at these places, and we usually store them at a hotel that we were staying at or someplace, friends or whatever. And if we come back, I mean, nothing really valuable. It's like tennis gear, tennis rackets, and things that we've bought over there or whatever down there. And so if it's gone, if they clean it out and throw things away, it's not a hardship. But it's nice to come back and have a starter box to get set up at these places.
Sure. Are these like condos or like standalone homes? What kind of place are you saying for bases?
Hotels.
Oh, hotels.
Well, things have really opened up a lot for housing on the road than when we first started.
For sure.
Now there's a part of hotels, there's Airbnb. We always rented a hotel
by the month.
And so you have, nowadays you have internet, you've got maid service, you've got, all utilities are paid, you got a TV or whatever. And these days you have Wi-Fi and so on. And so we just get a monthly rate. And, sometimes you have the greatest view, you're located right in town, you don't need a car, you know what I'm saying? But like now people house sit, or they exchange homes, or there's all kinds of things to do, right? Airbnb.
Yeah, but when you're staying in these places for a month, or maybe like we've stayed in Chiang Mai, Thailand for a year in a place already, you get to know the owners, and you say, hey, can I have? I know you got a storage cabinet here. Can I throw some gear in there? Get it when I come back. Sure, it's not a problem. Never been a problem.
Yeah.
That's
great.
Well, and that brings up because I'm sure people are terrified about what your expenses are in retirement. Like, because people hear travel and they're like, oh my God, travel is so expensive. But have you then with these month-long hotel stays and things, what are you finding on the parity level when it comes to spending? Are you finding you're spending more in retirement than you expected, or are you spending less in retirement than you expected?
I think less. I mean, back to the 4%, we're not even near scratching that thing anymore. So I think as you get better at this trade, your expenses go down. Like when we say travel now, we're not doing a 1-day stop in this place and one flying here, flying there. No, it's we land and we settle in. And
there's vacationing and then there's travel.
Yeah, there's vacation and there's travel.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we have actually stayed at the Four Seasons or stayed at a high-class hotel, and, we do all of that. That's called a vacation, but our lifestyle is one of travel. And so, basically right now where you are, you're spending so much money for food and lodging and entertainment anyway. Well, if you go someplace else, you've got, you know what I'm saying?
Same expense.
Right. You've got the same amount of spending. And it's your personal infrastructure. We call it the personal infrastructure. And if your personal infrastructure is huge, then you're paying a lot of money for just peripheral things. And there's 4 categories of highest spending in any household. And that's your housing, which is the #1 hugest expenditure in anyone's household. And then there's transportation. And then there's your tax arrangements. And then there's food, dining, and entertainment. So if you can modify any of those categories, you have extra money to spend elsewhere.
That's great.
And then that brings up the second part, because a lot of the areas that you've been traveling to and living, you're doing a lot of geo-arbitrage, and you got obviously better spending rates and things. But then there's the language. So you're right now in Mexico. Do you guys speak Spanish, or are you like embedding yourself and learning the languages? Say when you go to Thailand, are you learning some Thai, or how do you do?
That's how we do it.
Because we want to get out of the tourist hubs into the countryside, whatever, as best we can. And Mexico, we've gotten pretty good at Spanish. I figure I speak about a 4th or 5th grade level, 4th or 5th grade level. The kids all understand me. If I go to Guadalajara or like Mexico City, they see a guy, blonde hair, blue eyes, Spanish coming out of their mouth, and it just doesn't compute.
Yeah.
So it's a difference of being from Louisiana and going to New York City. There's accent, and so all these places have accents.
Sure.
Thai's a little harder language, but we got to where we could travel on our own. We can get hotels, we can order food, we can talk to taxi drivers, and we can't discuss science projects with somebody, but we can get our point across.
Yeah. I was wondering on how you decide. I know everything's very organic, but what is usually the draw? Like, is it a financial, like maybe a lower cost of living, trying to find a place like that? It kind of keeps it under a certain level, or is it more of just curiosity, or the arts, or the beaches, or what is it that usually draws you to the next place?
Well, that could be a variety of things, actually. Billy is the chef. We used to have a restaurant, as you know, and so sometimes we go because the food is so good. We want to try out the food, which is for us just a normal thing. And so, and other times, my major in college was anthropology, so I love the local, the hill tribes and the indigenous and that kind of thing. And when we were younger, we did a whole lot of stuff like athletic things, so like maybe we wanted to climb that mountain or cross that river or whatever it was, you see. So we're just kind of hanging out. Like Billy said, we have a home base, like in Chiang Mai. That was our home base in Thailand. And then we'd go to Australia, we'd go to New Zealand, we'd go to Laos, we'd go to Burma, we'd go, these different places, and then we'd come back. And
that's where the geo-arbitrage comes in,
right?
Because when we're in Australia, we're spending a lot of money. It's a high priced place, and New Zealand as well. But then we come back to Thailand, and we sit there for 2 or 3 months, and now our numbers are back in line.
Right.
But because we track our spending like any business would,
right.
In your case, your doctors who are running offices better know what's going out as far as payroll and expenses and whatever. It's something you do every day. And so that's what we modeled our lifestyle off businesses.
There was no word geo-arbitrage at the time.
No, there was
No,
that
there was
word wasn't
nothing like
invented
that.
either. It was common sense to me,
Yeah.
Common sense. Yeah.
you know.
I'm curious if there was like, and I know Kevin's got a million questions. I don't want to steal from him, but if there's one thing like on the tip of your brain that's like, I wish people that don't do what we do, I wish there's this one thing they would understand, what would that be?
The effects of compounding.
Yes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I would have said something along the line of freedom. You know, the world is a huge place filled with wonderful people and gorgeous scenery. And, you know, go, if you can go and see it. It changes your mind, your perspective, the way you interact with the rest of who you're going to be tomorrow. You know, and you know, compound interest, that helps a lot. Of course it does. Yeah, really.
You know, the finances is important for this thing, and you know, and so 30 years of us having money invested, you know, it's done pretty well in the markets. So, you know, it just keeps growing exponentially. Meanwhile, our expenses have not increased very much, and you know, here we are.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I got a question then about, so you have a lot of experience with this. I know there's a community, and you've tied together people who've, again, been doing this for a long time, decades in many situations.
Right.
Have you ever seen somebody who's kind of pulled that jump cord and jumped, and then maybe didn't transition well? And if they didn't, what do you think it was, like the key factors that you would say were the struggles that they were experiencing?
I would say that some people do not know who they are without a job or a career. They, a couple that I'm considering right in my mind right now, she wanted to pursue more. There was something inside of her. Her self-esteem was related to the title and the amount of money she made, and she wanted and needed to achieve that, you know, before she could let it go. And her husband was a lot more kickback and self-entertaining and, you know, that sort of thing. But she herself needed something more societally recognized, and that was their stumbling block. So they quit retirement and went back to work.
I think couples probably struggle with this more than individuals do, though, because you know, you got to be on the same page with this.
Yeah.
You know, if one person doesn't want to travel and is a big spender, well, it's just not going to work too well, I don't think.
But we have met couples though, like the guy who wants to garden and grow his roses and feed the dog, that, you know, they've got 2 dogs that are a part of the family and are bred well and that kind of thing. And the wife wants to travel. And so what they do these days, especially, she goes off, and you've got Zoom and WhatsApp and all the apps and stuff. You take pictures and email, and then you can Skype online or whatever. And so she's brought him into her world. And meanwhile, he's been stable and he keeps their world intact. And so she gets what she needs and he gets what he needs. There's not one size that fits all.
Definitely not.
Wow.
Definitely not.
Impressive.
Yes.
You know, being physicians, I mean, you guys are pretty regulated and regimented, I should say, you know, in your jobs, and this is like there's no rails, you know, there's a blank canvas, and you get to create the future. It's up to you how you want to pursue that. There's nobody else going to do it for you.
Right.
Now, if you're married and you get a spouse, and that helps, and as long as you're on the same page, like I mentioned. But no, it's your time to shine. It's your time to be to step out of the box and do something different. And get off that rails that you're being confined to. And
you can redefine yourself. And
yes.
There's mentoring and there's volunteering. And my gosh, the doctors around the world, there's people that go to these communities and do the cleft palates, or dentists that come in and actually give people teeth, you know, or fix the ones left that they have. There's so much, or distributing medicines or doing healthcare or whatever. There's so much to be done from people with your skill levels. I mean, you're really needed around the world.
Yeah, well, the podcast, I think, is centered. Were you going to say something, Kevin?
Oh, go ahead.
I would say that, you know, this podcast obviously is very centered around trying to inspire physicians to, or anyone that wants to listen, not just physicians, but about the possibility of change, and that despite like those rigid things that you're speaking of, that the system, you don't have to be 100% in the system. You can either be all the way out, you could have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but create something that is more of who you are. If you realize that it's not just about being a physician, it's other things that can bring you joy and meaning. And
it's having some faith, and you know, it's good. It's not going to be comfortable.
No.
You know, there's going to be some fears involved with when you're
sure.
doing this stuff. All of a sudden, you got a steady job where you're getting paid big money every week or month, and all of a sudden that check's not there next Friday, and it's like, oh, you know, now what? And so you got to have some faith that you've been able to manage your finances through 30 years or whatever.
Or your time, manage your time.
And manage your time, right? And so, you know.
Yeah, you know, Kevin and I, we haven't really said a lot about us, but we've gone through major shifts ourselves. I don't know if Kevin, if you want to say anything about that, but I know you've got the question brewing.
Well, it's a recurring theme that comes through what we're talking about is, if you look at the microcosm of sort of the physician space where it's becoming ultra more regimented, and you're having all these external factors tell you what you're supposed to be doing. And so physicians in general, I think, are getting burned out. But I think in society, in a lot of ways, we're being told on the outside, this is what you're supposed to do. Like you mentioned, Akaisha, early on, like when you were in California in the 80s and 90s, you were these expectations. You had to have the big house and blah, blah, blah. And so once you have kind of cleaved that off and recognize, well, what is important to me? It sounds like that's really allows you to, you know, once you know, people call it your why or whatever, and you recognize, well, what's important, the experience or the thing. And then with Billy's mathematical ability, where you're looking at that compound interest, and then you can kind of start intentionally designing things. It just seems to make something like this. Again, we're talking about specifically for physicians, but this is really about specifically for anybody out there, because these themes of uncomfortableness and fear and uncertainty are going to come up over and over again. So we've heard all the great stuff. Were there any times that you guys maybe had something where you're like, well, what, questioning your decision, or maybe you had some struggles that we sort of gloss over when everything continues to go well?
Well, in 2007 and 8, when the real estate market collapsed, you know, that put a pretty good dent in our finances pretty quick, and as it did with everyone else. And so we questioned whether or not we could, you know, survive it, and we obviously did. But you know, we brought up the fact of possibly going back to work or seeing what we could do to generate some cash or whatever. And but it got to the point where it would cost us more to fire up that machine than it was to continue what we're doing, because you know, you got the cost. There's a cost of working, and that's wardrobes and car and et cetera, et cetera. And so we just hunkered down and made it through. Since then, what we did is we just raised our cash level. And so now if there's a downturn, we can just, we got plenty of years of cash that we can draw from and not affect our portfolio.
I'd like to say that in the beginning, and I mentioned the emotional component of retirement for us, or at least for me, that was the hardest part. My family lived in town. We were close to the ocean. I had the house of my dreams. You know, I had friends, that kind of stuff. I had a dog and a garden, all that kind of thing. And there was nobody doing what we were doing. And of course, my mom was just horrified. And my dad was secretly jealous, you know what I mean? But the point is, nobody was doing what we were doing, and there was no guarantee. Not that we were guarantee-oriented people, we're not. We know there is no guarantee. But there was no camaraderie either. There was nobody to talk to. You know, at times we wondered, or I wondered, you know, gee whiz, what are we doing? But I never second guessed our decision. I just had to deal with those emotions of the disapproval, or the lack of understanding, or the judgment, or, you know, feeling like there's nobody I can talk to about this. Whereas today there's forums and there's other people you can.
And that's one reason why we have a mentors program, is so that people can talk to us who've been out here doing this for decades, and that try to alleviate their fears a little bit, and because it's just natural. I mean, it's you're doing something different, you know, and your peers aren't going to support you. You know, when back to that 2-year period, we did not tell our parents. We told our parents I went in and gave my boss 2-week notice. That's what we told our parents.
Because they would have just said, no, you can't do it. No, I don't want you to do it. It's not going to be possible. You'll fail. Once we told our friends, it was like, you'll be back in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
With your tail
Have
on.
fun on your vacation.
Yeah, right.
You know?
We didn't want nor need that negativity input. No.
No.
We were on our own. We knew we were on our own. We chose to do this, and nobody was going to hold us back.
That's crazy. As a parent, I'm like, oh my God, that would horrify me. If
I know.
But
My mother was not happy.
but as a child, or I should say, is not with, when you don't have that relationship anymore, I can understand extremely why, because people can become so negative, not because they're awful people, but because they care, and that negativity can significantly have a huge impact on the individual. So I'm just, that was an amazing decision, you guys.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we found is that we challenge their belief systems. Nobody retires at 38. You don't retire at 48. You work all your life
until you die.
Until you die. and I think it woke them up to there's another way to live. But it also, their way of reacting was to put us down, to tell us we couldn't do it, the negativity. And we just didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, and we both come from very hardworking families. Billy and I love to work still today. We are productive. Billy has always got a project going. We've done a lot of volunteer work all over the world, and we like a challenge. And so I never once thought I'd be bored. Never once thought I wouldn't know what to do with my time. I mean, between learning this, that, the other, and so on and so forth. I mean, I wish I didn't have to sleep so much. You know what I'm saying? So, there's just, the world needs people who are willing to move, to take an action, to direct, to guide, to teach, to mentor. They need people like this.
I can only imagine what the explorers of years past,
Lewis and Clark,
when they went out on their own like
Columbus,
that, what their families say, don't go.
Yeah, right. The world's flat. Oh no.
I'm sure they did. Yeah. I'm sure they did. We were saying that, we wake up in the morning with nothing to do. And at the end of the day, we've only got half of it done. That's pretty much the way our lives are. Because through the day, we just get occupied, get busy with something, and
we like to build community. The world's a great place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but that to me was another interesting part, is this community aspect, because you're leaving a set of friends.
Mm-hmm.
How did you approach? You guys seem very extroverted in a lot of ways. So if someone's an introvert, pop it out, because I'm more introverted.
We both are.
You're both introverts.
We are.
No way.
Yes, we are.
Oh, holy smokes! So then, how do you build those communities then?
We had to get out of our shell. When we wrote our first book, it was like, well, we got to sell it. That's the whole point of writing this thing. And we had to crack that egg and put ourselves out there in the public view. And so that's what started that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, since then, and then traveling really opens you up to strangers, because you've always got stories to tell and experiences to swap and things of that sort. Next thing you know, you're friends, especially with today's communication. Mm-hmm. And so,
and there's always somebody that's in need, somebody that needs help. You can always volunteer, whether it's to, wash dogs or take care of dogs or help somebody garden or whatever. I mean, there's always need. And then you help somebody, and then you become a friend.
But we're really private people. We really
are.
Appreciate our privacy. And there's times when we just want to get away on our own someplace, not tell anybody.
Yes.
Just because.
I love it. Yeah, it seems like you both mentioned challenge, and I think being introverts, you're challenging yourself to be more extroverted, and I think it's just amazing what you're doing, and the awareness you have for even processing the emotions ahead of time, and knowing the things like the potential objections and the obstacles that could arise. Like, you're very intentional, and I think
we don't look at them like obstacles that could arise. We know things are going to happen.
Right.
We know we're going to be judged. We know people. We know it.
But the Marines, I think, have a saying: improvise and adapt and overcome.
Overcome. Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. I'm like the financial crisis that we've been through the 87, the 91, the Y2K, 2007, 8, you figure it out.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
we're getting better at figuring it out.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, but to just make a point, there has to be a certain level of resourcefulness and belief in yourself that you're
Yes.
capable of
Yes,
overcoming.
it comes from the heart,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And
And the great cognitive.
confidence.
Yes. Yes, most definitely. And you're willing to just learn as you go if you have to.
Exactly.
That's right. If we
Yeah.
wait till something's perfect, like our first book even, it never would have happened if we
No.
would have waited for the perfect time to retire. I mean, in the middle of the Gulf War just started. It's never the perfect time ever. I mean, if somebody wants to have a child, is it perfect? Is it perfect? No, never.
Yeah.
And people take chances all the time, but they couch it in a language they understand. Like marriage is, 50-50. You know what I'm saying? Well, would you invest in something that's 50-50? Not really.
100.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
You want guarantees.
Everybody wants that guarantee.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, people take chances all the time.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great quote. People take chances all the time. They just couch it in terms they understand, and
That's
I think
right.
that's really true. And yeah, you just hit me in my heart with that one.
Oh, yes. Okay, good.
All right, so I'm again, I really appreciate your time, but I have one last question here, unless Melissa has any more.
Go ahead.
This would be: you hid this for 2 years from all those friends and family.
Correct.
Now you're 30 years later. What are your friends saying about you now?
They're all
When you
dead.
talk to them.
Oh no.
Well, a lot of
I'm really kidding, guys.
It's horrible.
well, a couple of them are dead.
Well,
A couple of them are divorced.
Our parents have deceased. But,
Right.
that's one of the things that we discovered in this journey, is that we were both able to do end of life care for all of our
Yes.
parents.
Wow.
And I'm telling you that you talk about something that was rewarding. We didn't have. We've got siblings, and they all had to work.
Mhm.
We could be there 24/7,
Wow.
It's where we wanted to be.
and that's what we wanted to do.
Right.
And so I'm
Right.
telling you, it was nothing more rewarding than doing
That's
that
right.
for your parents.
Well, and some of our friends that said, well, we'll be back, wanting to go back to work and such, they are just now retiring.
Yes.
Just now. And so I think, we're 68. If I was going to start now, jumping in the back of a truck, crossing that river and throwing the backpack over when I haven't carried anything heavy like that for all those years I was working, I mean, I don't think my body could take it, right? But they're just now. And then what happened? COVID broke out,
That's
right?
right.
So they can't
So
travel.
they can't travel.
Go anywhere, right? And we're thinking we had 30 years of this. We saw the world, we didn't have to wait for no stupid stinking COVID to tell us we can't go.
Today, our backpack has more anti-inflammatories in it than just clothes.
Yes, it does. Anti-inflammatory. This pain aid, that pain aid. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
One thing I got to tell you, U.S. medicine versus other countries,
Yeah.
is we've had some tremendous experiences with using what's called medical tourism.
Mhm.
And I can just tell you that here in Chapala, I can go to a doctor and he's not going to tell me to get up and leave. I'll be in his office as long as I need to be in that office. And he's, Latins are pretty laid back in general.
Mhm.
And they just don't push you out. I know in the US, you guys are 7 minutes or 12 minutes and next and next and next. No. And you see them on the street and they'll stop you and ask you how you're doing. I mean, seriously, they all give us their personal cell numbers.
Mhm.
It's just a different system, and we really, really like it. I can walk into a cardiologist this afternoon and go in and get seen if I need to.
Wow.
I don't need to go to a specialist. I mean, I don't need to go to a primary doctor to get an okay to go see a specialist.
There's no PPO, there's no
Nothing,
HMO.
Yeah, that brings up a whole new set of questions, is the healthcare thing,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you retire at age 38, and then when people, I'm looking at the transition, probably because I've gone through the transition. You're thinking, well, first the money, first is expenses. What am I going to do? And then the other objection you have is, well, what about healthcare? And most of us
That's
are
a big one.
extraordinarily healthy anyway,
Right.
but you're always got in the back of mind because we know how bad the system is.
Right.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, would you kind of, what was that healthcare transition then for you? Because at 38, you're obviously not qualifying for Medicare. You are either going to have to buy something on the open market. And again, that's 1991. So that's pre-exchange. What did you do to navigate that in those early years?
Well, I actually met Billy and Nevus thinking I was covered, that I extended my employer health insurance to cover me for the next few months or something, and found out 3 months later I had been uncovered with health insurance. I was naked.
She survived.
And I made it 3 months. I made it 3 months, right? And, I grew up in a family where, my mom was ill off and on. So health insurance was a big deal. You had to have it. And so we did have a US-based health insurance policy for 10 or 15 years or something.
With a high deductible.
High deductible, the biggest deductible we could get at any time. And then we found out that overall, we were spending more time outside the US than inside the US, and we were getting care outside of the US.
At a fraction.
At a fraction of cost, including medical emergency care, colonoscopies. I almost lost my finger. It was degloved. Billy's had his heart issues, tests and such, and all those things. And we received very good care, all paid out of pocket, because the pricing is so reasonable, and the necessary painkillers or whatever one needs after an operation, that kind of thing. And so eventually we did actually go naked. That's what it's called in the community. You go naked of a US health insurance policy.
We are not covered now.
No, Medicare.
Medicare, but that's only good in the US, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we here in Mexico, we're not covered. But we just go and pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, it cost me.
Oh, sorry.
It cost me $30 to go see the cardiologist.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had
that includes the EKG.
Yeah.
Wow.
It just blows my mind. I have a friend who sort of stumbled. They didn't necessarily retire, but they traveled a lot, like after college, and so they've been doing a lot of the things that you've been talking about. But they do it. I mean, she lives in Colombia now with her husband, but I would always hear her stories about healthcare in other countries, and it was always remarkable to me is the fact that people get great coverage in other countries, and we sit here in this country. Oh my God, you don't have healthcare. Well, you're not covered here.
Right.
Like you can have the best policy in the world, and you're still paying out the nose if something goes wrong.
Right.
So yeah, it's good to hear these stories and good to hear it and emphasize again. You can do this, and these fears again that we create in our brains are not necessarily based in reality.
And most doctors that we have found speak English.
Mm-hmm.
The nurses, maybe not, but almost 100% of the doctors that we've encountered speak English.
One of the things we try to do on our website is to offer people options. Like there's not just one way to do something, no one size fits all. And as those categories that I mentioned to you earlier, housing, transportation, taxes, and dining and food, entertainment, we try to get people, you can try this, you can try that, there is this, you could put these two together. I mean, options. And, everybody wants to have like a fallback plan or a net underneath the high wire. Sure, that's just normal. I get that. And the options are what those are. They give you something else you can choose from, a whole array of things you can choose from.
Yeah.
I look at it as, people all over the world have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. And so there's doctors all over the world that treat those things, and for, I'm not trying to put your profession down, but to think that the US has got the greatest healthcare in the world, to me, is not true.
No.
I mean, I've experienced this stuff in other countries, and, and because what the quality, the care in the US, the quality is good. The word care has been taken out, in my opinion, because it's so much financially oriented.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. One guy, but I see here where they actually do care. I mean, they'll not talk to you on the street and ask you how you doing. Are you feeling better, or maybe you need to come into the office again or something like that.
Do you know that in the hospitals they have separate rooms for the family to stay? So like you're in there getting a kidney stone or taken out, or maybe you have this or that, or your thyroid, something, and so there's a couch and a bed and a pull-out bed and then extra chairs so that the family can stay overnight with you, so you're not scared.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Family, that's one thing that family is really important in these Latin countries.
Yeah.
It's real. It's that nucleus has not been broken here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
hey, Kevin, I had one last question before, unless you have another one.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm just curious, when you brought up these other places, medical care, suddenly I was thinking, are you all just with a US passport and or like citizenship wise, passport wise, and where you pay your taxes? Like, how is that if you're not living in the US most of the time?
Okay, first of all, being a U.S. citizen, which we still are, we don't want to give up our citizenship.
Right.
You're required to pay U.S. taxes,
Mhm.
no matter where you are in the world.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a requirement. As far as passport, yes, we hold a U.S. passport, and we treasure that very much. But we also became, within the last 2 or 3 years, we became permanent residents of Mexico.
Mm.
And so now we don't have to, when we enter the country, we don't have to show a passport. We can show them our permanente card, what's called a green card, and that kind of things. And so that's what we've done. But tax-wise, you're not gonna escape U.S. taxes. We still have to file and pay. You know, because we want our assets dollar-based, because I still believe that the U.S. dollar is the strongest currency in the world.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's something people don't always think about. That, you know, those are
No,
things.
you're right. A lot of people think that if you live outside the U.S., you don't pay U.S. taxes. Well, that's a fallacy. You can try it.
They may not want to come back then after that. Yeah.
Well, they'll attach your accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you guys' time today. And I want to make sure, because you have a ton of resources, but would you mind talking about your internet home base so that people can find your resources and discover more about you? And because we've literally only touched a very small topic, little bits of what you have on your website. Would you mind telling the listeners about that and your resources?
Yeah, it's called retireearlylifestyle.com, all one word, retireearlylifestyle.com. And if they go there, they can see we have many interesting articles we've written and interviews of other expats that we've done, expat and early retirees that we've done, places that we've traveled to, and restaurant tips.
We have a bookstore and a mentors program and a free newsletter. And we answer any email. If you have questions, you can email us.
At the guide at retireearlylifestyle.com.
And we'll answer you.
The guide, GUIDE.
Awesome.
UID. Yeah. Well, I got to thank you guys so much here, because
thanks for having us.
It has been a pleasure talking to you, and I just love the longevity. You know, and so when people have questions, I encourage them to reach out to you. Certainly talk to people who've done it. And I can't think of a more challenging environment, because like you said, pre-internet, we have, like right now, we're such crybabies talking about not having resources.
Oh, I know. When it goes down, we all freak out.
Yeah, this is insane. Like, but people can't. I mean, the resources that we have now to do what you guys did before that, and then to gone through, like you said, the financial struggle is just absolutely amazing and a wonderful story. So, unless you have anything else, Melissa, why don't you take us out?
Excuse me, I'll give you one quick story. Recently, Akaisha was in the States and I was down at the beach, and we try to keep in touch every day. We have conversations every day early in the morning, just to get any business we need to take care of it done. Anyway, I get down to the beach, and what happens? There's no power and there's no cell service. I'm there's nothing going on. I can't communicate with her whatsoever. And I know she's expecting me to check in to let me know that I made it okay. And I mean, I'm just going, man, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. But that's how dependent we've become on these crazy things, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when the cell tower goes down, that's bad. I can handle the power, but when the cell tower goes out, oh. Yeah. So what I do, I went to the beach and had some beers.
Yes, we've all become spoiled with all these wonderful amenities that we have. But, you know, I want to thank you both, Billy and Akaisha, all the things you've been doing the last 30 plus years to create the story that we're sharing today. I think what you've done to just, not just as Kevin was saying, there's so much information out there, but to actually witness a couple who's done this, but also is open to discuss about the challenges and the emotions and the things that keep us, despite the information, from pursuing and actually moving forward with a lifestyle like that. I just want to commend both of you for doing such an amazing job that so many of us admire.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely put the notes of where people can find you. And for those of you listening out there, I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Coccaro, and of course, our lovely guests, Akaisha and Billy, who have joined us today. And if you don't know what the Change Physician is all about, you can go to thechangephysician.com and sign up, whether you're a physician or a physician ally. We'd love to see you there. And of course, you can always check out all of our episodes on all the wonderful podcast locations. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.
Stay well, folks.